Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. We're currently 3/4 of the way through the year, and I'm currently still on track for playing a new game every single day. This is my Game a Day challenge, a thing I took on a while ago, hoping that throughout the course of 2022, I would play at least one new game every single day. Not just a general new game or unique game, but a game that's new to me. I do allow myself the leeway of covering expansions, so if there's an expansion, I count that. There's some other leeways here and there, but for the most part, the goal is that I'm constantly playing new things and hopefully clearing up my backlog, a backlog that I have made no reasonable dent in, unfortunately. But I'm still trying. And at the very least I'm keeping up. We'll have to figure out a new challenge. Maybe next year I just take on fewer new games instead of playing more new games so I can actually make some progress. Both at the same time is how I'll finally catch up. But in any case, this is a new game every single day. And as usual, going through these over here, we'll have our full recap shortly, the full recap of the entire quarter, something I've been doing now. So I do a full recap of, I guess, July, August, and September. We'll do a full ranking of all the 100 plus games I've played, not 100 plus, like 90 or so games I've played in that time frame. But in any case, for right now, these are the new games I've played in September. 30 new games to me and or expansions. And as usual, I'll be going through a very brief idea of just covering all of them, and then more specifically going into detail on 10 or 11 of these in a drop more detail of just where my opinion lies and how they are. As usual, timestamps down below to the general section and then the specific all of. So, going through this, starting off the bat with Cape May. I played Cape May from Thunderworks Games, enjoyed it overall, but did not fall in love with that one. It was a little simpler and to the point, kind of felt Monopoly Plus, and I think I want more out of my games. From there we have Sushi Go Party. Overall enjoyed it. I've played Sushi Go before. I don't believe I've played Sushi Go Party before. It's more Sushi Go, and that's not a bad thing, but also Sushi Go is not my go-to for drafting. That would be Seven Wonders. Then we have Ready, Set, Bet from AEG. Ready, Set, Bet is a betting game where you're rapidly placing things down, trying to anticipate how things are playing out, and constantly trying to get your bets in as the odds become more clear. Not that dissimilar to real life, also with frenetic chaos and all that stuff. Overall enjoyable game. I think I'd rather play Chinatown, which gives me very similar vibes and experience with a little less chaos and a little bit more strategy. Ready, Set, Bet is a very fun game. It's just very fun as a party game. From there we have Shake That City, another AEG title. Shake That City involves you shaking little cities and trying to build patterns. It's basically a pattern matching game. I enjoyed it overall, and a very unique mechanism. I think I overall prefer other pattern matching games. We have expansions for War Chest. I lumped both these expansions into one. In general, I allow myself to have expansions, but I don't allow every expansion to count as a new title. The War Chest expansions dove into both of those. Overall, they're more War Chest. I don't think they enhance my experience of War Chest. They're just more War Chest. More characters, more stuff. There are some rules, fortifications, things like that, but nothing that dramatically changed how I interact with the War Chest. I like War Chest for context. The War Chest expansions are just more of the same. We have Duos. Duos from... I should know the company. Duos from... I can't remember the company, but Duos is a party game in which you are trying to basically create sets of pairs and have other players score off of them. Intriguing concept. I thought the art was a little dialed down and wasn't a huge fan of the production value. It feels like the kind of game that won't actually make it make a hit long term. And part of that is production value. These things do matter, but I did enjoy the gameplay. I thought it was an interesting twist on the various mechanics we've seen, such as Dixit or Stella Dixit Universe. Any of these games where you're trying to figure out how other people mentally map things together. It had that, and it did a good job of it. I wish it had better production. Better production and better art could have really made it stood out more, but overall I did enjoy it. Then we have Nanga Parrot. Nanga Parrot from Dr. Finn's games. I played a few of his games, dove into those. Nanga Parrot is a game of trying to figure out these little mountain patterns, trying to figure out how you can score more optimally. Cute little puzzle, very much a filler game, which is what Dr. Finn is known for, and this is another filler game. Enjoyable, not necessarily a keeper for me, but enjoyable. Then we have Stifling Dark. Stifling Dark is going to be an upcoming game. I'll talk more about this later. I'll have review coverage of it later. But it's a hidden movement game with the caveat that it's a very different style of hidden movement. Very different style of hidden movement over here as you try to wander around the board trying to not really capture the bad guy so much as try to stay away from the hidden movement person who can sneak up behind you. A very intriguing concept as you try to accomplish your goals while avoiding the person who's hidden. Overall fun. We'll talk more about that one in more dedicated coverage. We have River Wars Reloaded from Steamforged Games. This is like kind of a semi-cheat because it's a reloaded version. Still going to count it. But River Wars from Steamforged Games, they took River Wars and they redid it and added a bunch of things to it. I dove into that one, had an enjoyable time. Overall, I still want to see the final version of it, but what they've done is already clearly a step up for River Wars, at least coming from myself, who've been playing River Wars for a very, very long time now. Then we have Mariposas from AEG again. That's the third AEG title today so far. We have Mariposas from AEG. Finally dove into that one. It's been a long time coming. I thought it was fine, not amazing, not bad. Both an enjoyable experience, but also one that I don't overly... I'll have a review coverage on this one. It's an enjoyable experience, one that neither overly impressed me nor problematic. It was just totally fine. A totally fine game of ambiently wandering around the board trying to accomplish your goals. We have Block and Key from Inside Up Games. Was not a huge fan of this one. I felt it was more gimmicky than anything else. I felt it was more about the two-dimensional towers aspect of anything, as opposed to any serious degree of like really pattern matching or whatnot. Felt like the decisions you made were fairly obvious, plus a healthy dose of luck mixed into that, and then two-dimensional tower that just made it seem better as far as the production value. Production value is good, but that's not enough for me for the game. Then we had that's Block and Key. We have My Little Flower Shop Dice, another Dr. Finn's games. This is one of the dice versions of his My Little Flower Shop. I have not yet played My Little Flower Shop. I did play the dice version. It's a Yahtzee style roll and write that is a little simpler than what I typically want. It's still very much a filler game, a little on the lighter side. I'd rather play other Yahtzee style roll and writes. We have Power Core Call of Cthulhu. This was unfortunately cancelled after one day, it seems, but Power Core Call of Cthulhu from Board and Dice, they basically dove into a two-player head-to-head card collectible, not really collectible, but a card-based system, two-player head-to-head, as you gather various Elder Ones and combine them as you try to rotate your power cores and do your abilities and all that stuff. I thought the graphic design was not great, and I really think it held them back strongly. There's a lot of feedback that the graphic design just did not inspire confidence. The overall game was actually fun, although it's not my go-to genre, so it's hard for me to judge. Most of the time when I'm playing two-player head-to-head games, most of the time I inevitably end up passing in them. I just find that it takes very much a closed system, something like Radlands took me. Open-ended systems, I need to love you to no end to actually pick you up. Then we have Warhammer Quest Lost Relics. I dove into that one. This is a Warhammer Quest game. This is from Games Workshop. I thought it was a very well done system that ultimately seemed broken. Once you figured out how to play, it's a little bit of a dungeon crawler, and once you figure out how you try to win, you can just rush the end game. And that kind of ruined the game for me. I like the system, I like the mechanics, I thought it was well done, but then once you kind of figured you can just rush the end game and always win, or almost always win, kind of ruined the system for me. Then we have Almost Innocent. Almost Innocent is a hidden roll. No, not really hidden roll. It's a deduction game. Almost Innocent is a deduction game in which you're trying to deduce what your combination of things are by basically asking questions, eliminating answers, and trying to ask better and better questions based on what will give you and the other players the most information. Overall, enjoyed it from Colossal Games. It's not an amazing game for me, but it was an enjoyable game, very similar to Paint the Roses. Solid, cooperative deduction game that I enjoyed. Then we have Blitzball. Another one, Blitzball Ultimate Edition from Games Workshop. This is my first time playing a Games Workshop football-based game. I've played football-based games before, like those football combat-based games, but I haven't actually played any of the Games Workshop ones. Blitzball was fun. I enjoyed it. Overall, just a solid game of trying to figure out the tactical aspect of how to both tackle and approach and run and score goals. I like the experience. Did not love the experience. It's a genre that I think it's a genre that most of the time I think I would like but not love it. But overall, enjoyed Blitzball. A solid, enjoyable game. Then we have Age of Inventors. Age of Inventors is an upcoming or active Kickstarter, I guess, by the time, or expired, done Kickstarter. I don't know. Age of Inventors is a Kickstarter. We'll talk more about that at some point. There's dedicated coverage of that. That was a solid resource optimization game. Very much on the heavier end than you think. It seems a little lighter, and then you dive into it, and you're like, if you're not careful, you will run out of resources and have a really hard time actually playing the game, let alone winning the game. Age of Inventors was pretty solid. I had a few nitpicks and complaints of things I want to see done differently, but overall, a very solid game. Then we have the Snallygaster situation from Renegade Games. Renegade Games, the Snallygaster situation is a cooperative hidden movement game that was very charming, but also didn't overly compel me. It was charming. It was good. I enjoyed it. That's where it ends off for me. And then lastly, we have Moonshine Empire from Barrel Age Games, I want to say. Moonshine Empire is a pick up and deliver game with an interesting combination of utilizing vehicles in a fun way to basically try to figure out the optimal way to deliver all this moonshine you're creating. I liked it. I felt it probably needed more than 2 players to really shine. Just got 1 play in at 2 players, so I don't really have more of a in-depth opinion past the fact that it was intriguing. It was pick up and deliver, which is not my go-to mechanic, but I think that it really needed more players to ultimately shine. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the 11 or so titles that we'll actually be talking about a bit more, if you give me a second to have a sip of coffee. So, off the bat, starting off with Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley over here. I really enjoy Stardew Valley. I got a chance to play this one. This is one that is a cooperative game based on the video game that I've never played. And Stardew Valley it falls into that category that I really like for cooperative games, in which when you win, you feel like you could have lost, and when you lose, you feel like you could have won. It's a tight game in the sense that you feel like you will never be able to accomplish your goals by the end of the game, but as you continuously ramp up your production, as you ramp up your farming, your animals, all this stuff, it seems like you actually could manage to get everything done and accomplish all the various goals that Grandpa left you. I really liked it. I don't know if it has staying power in my collection. I'm curious about that, but it certainly has more plays in my collection. It's one that gives you a solid puzzle of trying to figure out how to grow your farm in different ways. I thought some elements of the game felt a bit repetitive, like the friend aspect. I want to dive into it more. I want to dive into it more is where I'm at with it. I liked it. I thought it was compelling. I thought it was charming in the art, the style, the theme behind it. Supposedly there are some second edition adjustments to the rules that I need to find I think it's just rules adjustments. I don't even know if it's component adjustments. It might be. But they made some small adjustments in second edition, I think related to the mine and possibly some other elements. I felt it wasn't necessarily 100% balanced as far as different approaches. But the overall aspect of it, cooperative game, try to survive, do what you need to do, build out your farm, and try to optimize around 16 rounds of play. Overall, enjoyed it. Excited to dive back into it. So that's Stardew Valley. Then we have Andromeda's Edge, which I don't have on the table because it's a prototype that I don't have in my collection. But Andromeda's Edge is from... I should know the answer. I did a full interview on this one. Andromeda's Edge is from Cardboard Alchemy and Luke Laurie. It's Cardboard Alchemy that I was pausing on. Luke Laurie, who's done Dwellings of Eldervale, and Andromeda's Edge is the spiritual successor to Dwellings of Eldervale. It was a solid... It is a solid continuation of Dwellings of Eldervale, which is a game that I enjoyed but didn't really stick for me. Andromeda's Edge I liked more. I still have some of the same complaints as Dwellings of Eldervale, which doesn't mean it's not for you. It means that if you like Dwellings of Eldervale, which most people seem to have liked it, I like Dwellings. I just didn't love Dwellings the way most do. But I think that if you like Dwellings, it has a lot of the same core DNA in a good way. For me, some of the changes they made are better. Not perfect still. There's still some of the aspects I complain about a bit. Like, I still don't love the wandering monster kind of symptom. It kind of doesn't feel as... I don't love the wandering monsters. They feel like they're kind of in the way as opposed to being powerful and interesting, just irritating more than anything else. But past that, I liked a lot of the changes they made. I like the upgrading systems they have. I like the way you plant your ship and turn them into buildings. Similar concepts to Dwellings, but I liked it better here. I like the combat mechanism of re-rolling your lower dice when you have more ships in combat, so it gives you an edge to the fact that previously you could have a single ship just destroy a fleet just by a lucky roll. Over here, you still could have that happen, but they added more mitigation that balances around more ships equals more chances to re-roll. Overall, really enjoyed it. I thought it was all the things I liked about Dwellings, with less of the things, not none of the things, less of the things I disliked about Dwellings. But overall, enjoyed it. Then we have Roleplay Adventures. Over here I have Nephris's Judgment over here. Roleplay Adventures is one that I dove into and really enjoyed. Like, really, really enjoyed. Now, granted, one scenario so far. And we're still going to be playing more. We're going to be diving more into Nephris's Judgment, diving more into the game, giving ourselves the backstories, trying the subsequent scenarios. I really liked the game a lot based on the one play, and I just need more plays to see where it settles for me. But overall, I thought it was on the lighter side, very much, but it gave me an enjoyable choose-your-own adventure with a degree of consequence, with feeling the decisions and the consequences of my actions, questioning whether I made the right choice of my actions. Whenever a game makes me feel as a character, that's a starting point that I can get behind. And the combination of that and the dice mitigation aspect, where you really have to utilize your cards in combination with the other people at the table to really try to figure out the best way to get the dice on the cards, whether they're tests or they're enemies or whatever. I felt that mechanically it was rewarding, and thematically it was rewarding, based on just the tutorial scenario. If it grows from there, I am all in on this one, because, yeah, Roleplay Adventures, really, really enjoyed this one so far. I think they have another expansion coming out with like 9 more scenarios or 9 more adventures. I am all in already. Granted, I should probably play this one a bit more, but I'm all in already. Then we have The Loop. The Loop from Pandasaurus Games with the expansion, the Revenge of Ozilla. I really like The Loop. Really, really like The Loop. It was another solid pick for me over here. The Loop is one that, not solid pick, that makes it sound like I picked it. It's a game that I covered and reviewed. Many games I cover are totally okay, as evidenced by the many games that I kind of rapidly go into and don't heavily touch upon. But there are some games that really stand out, and both, Roleplay Adventures for me is one of them, as is The Loop. I love this cooperative puzzle. I love the combination of how you utilize your cards and your abilities to try to figure out how to activate your loops at the right time, to activate all the missions. It is challenging, it has variability to scenarios. The expansion gives you even more content and more scenarios. It really, to me, has become almost a replacement for Pandemic. I no longer have Pandemic. I've played Pandemic a ton, but Pandemic Legacy kind of ruined it for me. But if you're looking for a very basic, straight, non-dungeon crawler, just a basic idea of here's a game which good thing happens, bad thing happens, good thing happens, bad thing happens, one of those cooperative games, The Loop might be one of my favorites, if not my favorite right now. I guess Spirit Island is probably still there, but Spirit Island is more almost thematic in its approach. If you're looking for something a little dialed down, a little more purely mechanical, The Loop is up there. I'm really liking it. I'm a huge fan of it right now. I need more time with it, but I'm a huge fan of it currently, and I'm always happy to dive into it. Then we have Fit to Print from Flat Out Games. Fit to Print from Flat Out Games is an interesting one that I don't know where it settles for me just yet. See, Fit to Print is very much has the puzzle mechanism that Flat Out Games has, of the idea of trying to optimize your score based on grabbing tiles and placing them down into your own little area, and then trying to figure out how to score optimally around that. What Fit to Print has, and Fit to Print is the idea of your kind of coming up with your newspaper publishing. So there's a degree of pacing, and get the story and grab these stories, and now put them in and organize them in your paper and get it all ready and fit to print. But the problem is it has a real-time element to it. And the real-time element of Fit to Print means that I'm kind of mixed where it falls for me. They have a non-real-time element if you want that, but the game is primarily designed around the real-time element, and so from a pure puzzly sense, it probably falls around Calico for me. Below Cascadia, around Calico, above Verdant, but the fact that it has a real-time element means I don't know how it settles. Because for me, most real-time games have not stayed in my collection long-term. I find that most real-time games, I'd rather just play something that's a little less frenetic and hectic, and I often don't pull them off the shelf quite as much, and then they eventually leave my collection. I really like Fit to Print. It is real-time. I'll have to see where it settles, but for right now, I'm still interested. For right now, I'm still engaged with this. We'll see. It's a twist on Flat Out Games' previous designs because of the real-time element. It plays well at 6 players because of the fact that you're all doing this real-time, so it goes all the way up. I believe it's 6 players. I believe it goes with 6. Yeah, 1 to 6 players. I liked it as a bunch of solo puzzles, which I have not dove into yet, but I like it, but the real-time element is a question mark for me. We have 9 Minute Kingdom, which I really like this one. 9 Minute Kingdom is a game I really enjoyed. This was a very cheap Kickstarter I backed at one point. It showed up. It's like, I mean, the components, the box, a lot of things over here are very dingy and cheap, but the actual game is just a very simple drafting of just to have a bunch of cards, draft them, put them down in your kingdom, build a tableau, try to score efficiently. The game legitimately lasts 9 minutes. I timed our first game. Once you got done with the rules, I timed our first game. It was 9 minutes. Then I dove into a few variants as well with my wife. Really overall enjoyed 9 Minute Kingdoms. It plays quickly, it's rewarding, it's simple. This is an absolute highlight for me as far as a quick, simple, accessible scoring game. Honestly, it kind of fits in the vein of a Flat Out Games kind of style of design, of just quick, simple scoring, all that stuff. As you draft 9 cards, lay out a 3x3 grid, variants can potentially mix that up in different ways, but I really enjoyed 9 Minute Kingdoms. Then we have Talisman. Talisman, the 4th edition from Fantasy Flight. Dove into that one for the first time, and that's an older title. Like, I think the original one's like a 1980s or 1970s something title. It is an older title and an older design, and that definitely shows. Talisman is ultimately a roll and write game. You roll a die and you move around the board. Then you roll a die for the thing that inevitably you encounter with, and then you roll more dice and more dice and more dice. There's a few decisions you're making, but most of the time you're just rolling dice and seeing the world develop around you. Despite that, it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable to see an older design and how it was kind of hitting that hybrid of new versus old. And I think there's a reason it's out of print and less sought after. And I think that overall, I think the design does come across as older. And it's one that I'm not eager to dive into again. But I enjoyed seeing it, and I enjoyed experiencing it. I enjoyed having the world develop around me and gathering my equipment and my companions and upgrading my stats as I tried to venture from level to level to eventually hit the climactic endpoint of the game. I enjoyed what Talisman was bringing to the table. I still need to play Talisman Harry Potter because I have that, which I'm less looking forward to now, honestly, but I'll do it because my daughter likes Harry Potter, and why not? But overall, I understand the appeal Talisman has in terms of either the original game design or alternatively as far as a gateway game to people who want something that's, not, I don't know, Rise of Moloch or whatever. But for me, it's one that I am happy I finally dove into a Talisman game. I am less happy I'm diving into more Talisman games. It is a little longer than I'd like for the decision space I'm making, but I'm happy I got to try and table it. We have Trudvang Legends. Trudvang Legends from Command Games. This is one that is not a disappointment, but also not a game I was overly impressed by. By now, you've probably seen my review of it, or if you haven't, feel free to check it out. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I liked Trudvang Legends, but certainly not like, hey, I spent $250 on all the stuff, kind of liked it. The good news is I'll be able to sell and get my money back. I'm not worried about that. But Trudvang Legends is one that I overall enjoyed what it was doing with a few complaints, and those complaints are enough for me to just not keep it and not play it. Trudvang is giving you both a story narrative as well as a legacy aspect that the game kind of remembers things around you. So you're slotting cards into both the sideboard and the main board as the world remembers the situations and the events and different encounters, and slowly having new spawn points and new cities and burn cities and different kinds of things are happening around you in the game. Meanwhile, you're engaging in a choose your own adventure experience as well as engaging in a degree of bag building. For me, I felt Trudvang was very comparable to Roleplay Adventures in terms of the experiences I got out of both of them, except Roleplay Adventures excelled over Trudvang in all elements. I felt Roleplay Adventures gave me a story that I was more invested in. It gave me consequences that I was more emotionally tied to. I felt that the decision space around how I manipulated the dice in Roleplay Adventures felt more interesting than the decision space around how I manipulated my bag in Trudvang. I'm not saying it wasn't interesting, and I'm not saying the story wasn't interesting either. overall Trudvang was, hey, like I played like 6 or so scenarios of the game, and I was like, hey, this is fun, this is good, I like what it's doing, but I'd rather give my time to other games, including roleplay adventures. I'd rather replay roleplay adventures and try different branching pathways than diving more into Trudvang. I like Trudvang, but it wasn't one that hooked me, it was one that I enjoyed, and I don't need to dive into it for another 14 scenarios for the base game, and who knows what with the expansions. I was like, it's fine, I've enjoyed my time with it, I like what it has to offer, and I'm ready to move on from it. Then we have WildStyle, which I don't have on the table, but I should. WildStyle from Pandasaurus Games, another Pandasaurus title that I really enjoyed. WildStyle is another real-time game that is currently here, but I wonder about its longevity. Like Fit to Print, I enjoyed the puzzle that WildStyle gave me. It was a game that's quickly about, again, real-time element of rapidly grabbing cards to create sets of 3, to be able to use those sets of 3 to place tags on the board, to create a little bit of area control, a little bit of pattern matching, and try to optimize your score around it, and as well as the various scoring goals they have. I liked what WildStyle does. Thematically, didn't really pull me in. Art, aesthetics, all that stuff didn't really pull me in. But the gameplay itself, the real-time element, was well done in a way that was, hey, that was a really fun experience. Let's do it again, and again, and again. But I wonder how long that will last, because again, real-time games just haven't historically lasted. So as far as real-time goes, really enjoyed WildStyle, easy recommendation. As far as whether I'm invested in it, right now, yes, it's still on my shelf. Will it hold up over time? Like Fit to Print, it's just a question of waiting and seeing. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It usually comes down to whether I'm compelled to pull it off the shelf or not. Then we have Songbirds. Songbirds was a game that Shut Up and Sit Down recently covered. Had a chance to dive into that one. It's an interesting game of basically laying down a bunch of cards and trying to establish which songbird you think will maintain the highest value by the time the grid is fully placed, which is a bit of a guessing game around your own strategies as well as your opponent's strategies, and comes down to the timing of trying to call something at the right time, but you call it too early and it becomes too obvious what you're doing, call it too late and it becomes, well, someone else got there first and is scoring the points for it. So it's an interesting balance of trying to ensure that you are the first person to correctly predict the right songbird and then to continue escalating and playing off the grid to ensure that the current status of the songbird actually achieves its end game scoring. It's a very interesting game with one flaw, which is that the game comes down to making one decision at the right time optimally, and if you fail that one decision, everything else is kind of semantically not relevant. And what I mean by that is you're making a lot of decisions in the game, but if I think that the green songbird is winning, if I call it after you did, it doesn't matter how well I play after that, I won't win. And so there's an interesting kind of timing aspect here that I like the game, I like the puzzle, and it's not that long. It's like a 20-minute game, maybe 25 minutes, maybe 30. But I think that having the entire game come down to a single decision point at a single moment in time is a bit of a flaw in the experience that makes me like Songbird, but not necessarily love it. And then lastly, we have Hanamikoji, Geisha's Road. Dove into this one for the first time. I love Hanamikoji. I've played Hanamikoji a ton. I have not played the Geisha's Road. This is my first time diving into Geisha's Road. Tried it a few different ways with a few different modules. They have a ton of modules for this game because you can also use the various module pack for Hanamikoji. You can use this for Geisha's Road as well. I really liked it. I haven't had a chance to play Geisha's Road until now. I think it's just as comparable to Hanamikoji in terms of the general appeal. If I had to pick, if I could only play one or the other, Hanamikoji or Geisha's Road, either is fine. I might instinctively lean towards Hanamikoji, but that's also because I've played Hanamikoji like 30 times, and Geisha's Road I've played like 3 times, so there is that balancing factor. But I liked it. They both give you different versions of the same puzzle, the best I cut you choose game that I personally have played. That's what it is. Hanamikoji is the best I cut you choose game, and Geisha's Road continues that with a ton of variability in terms of how you're going to mix things up, what ability tiles you're going to have, which combination of tiles you're going to use, which cards you're going to mix into the deck, whether you're going to use the side Geishas so they have abilities based on where they land. Lots of ways to mix up the experience, so there's definitely a version of Hanamikoji that works for you, assuming you're fine with the basic premise of the I cut you choose mechanic, which I certainly am. I love it and think it's incredibly well done. And those are the games I played in September. Those are the new to me games I played in September, the ones I dove into in different ways, and that is basically it. That is a roundup. We'll see you back with October, as well as I'll be doing a full ranking of all the games I dove into in, again, July, August, and September. I have to check how I do that again. I think it's just done based on every single thing I played in those 3 months, regardless of where it falls on the list, but we shall see. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Kill. I appreciate you being here, and as always, I hope you have a good one.